Where does the human soul reside? As a surgeon, I do not look to philosophy, I look to the white matter. It lives in the delicate, pulsing anatomical pathways of the prefrontal cortex. Welcome back to the Blackbook. Today we examine an anatomical erasure. We open the clinical archives on the most devastating, legally sanctioned destruction of human consciousness in modern medical history. A surgical tragedy. What makes you human? Your ability to feel anxiety, to plan for tomorrow, to feel grief. All of these complex emotions travel through a very specific biological highway, the thalamocortical radiations. This white matter connects your emotional center, the thalamus, to your logical center, the frontal lobe. It is the bridge of humanity. But what happens when the medical establishment decides that bridge is too noisy? In the 1940s, psychiatric wards were completely overflowing. Thousands of patients suffering from trauma, schizophrenia, and severe clinical depression were locked away. They were incredibly expensive to feed and difficult to manage. The medical world was desperate for a solution. They did not want a cure. They wanted a silencer. They needed a fast way to make the chaotic human mind compliant. And unfortunately, they found one. Enter Dr. Walter Freeman, a charismatic neurologist, a relentless showman, and a man driven by extreme, unchecked ambition. But there was one terrifying detail that history often hides. Dr. Freeman was not a surgeon. He had zero formal surgical training. Yet, he believed he could cure the deepest agonies of the human mind with a tool modeled directly after a simple kitchen ice pick: the transorbital lobotomy. His clinical theory was brutally simple. If the white matter pathways are causing extreme anxiety and emotional pain, why not just sever them completely? Why not unplug the emotional core from the logical brain? Think of a massive, complex telephone switchboard. Freeman's solution to a noisy line wasn't to carefully fix the wiring. It was to take a sledgehammer and smash the central control unit. Complete, irreversible, neurological isolation. He didn't even require a sterile operating room. Freeman bought a customized van, which he proudly called the lobotomobile. He traveled across the country, performing this procedure in hotel rooms, basements, and parking lots. There was no anesthesia used. Anesthesia required an anesthesiologist, which slowed his production down. Instead, he used a portable electroshock machine, a massive surge of voltage to the brain to induce a temporary, violent seizure. While the patient lay completely unconscious from the severe electrical trauma, Freeman worked with terrifying speed. He constantly boasted that he could completely alter a human personality in under 10 minutes flat. He would peel back the eyelid. He would position the sharp metal instrument directly against the extremely thin bone of the eye socket, just millimeters from the frontal lobe, the delicate sealing of the orbit. Then, a swift tap with a heavy surgical mallet. The bone would crack. The instrument would plunge deep into the white matter. A blind, completely unguided sweep through the most delicate tissue in the human body. With one sweeping motion, he severed the thalamocortical radiations. Millions of vital neural connections, representing a lifetime of complex memories, personality, and emotional depth, were entirely wiped out in a matter of seconds. When these patients finally woke up, the anxiety was gone. The severe depression was gone. But so was everything else. They were no longer the people they used to be. The surgical erasure was complete. Freeman confidently called it a success. The desperate families called it a medical miracle. Why? Because the loud, troubled, suffering patient was replaced by a quiet, docile, completely compliant shell of a human being. The terrifying anatomical reality of the lobotomy is that it traps the patient permanently in the present tense. Without the frontal lobe's connection to emotion, there is absolutely no concept of the future. They became hollow ghosts within their own bodies. They would eat when fed. They would sit when told. They lost the fundamental capacity to rebel, to argue, or to feel the profound weight of human existence. And the most terrifying part? Freeman didn't just target the severely mentally ill. He lobotomized housewives who were deemed too anxious. He lobotomized rebellious teenagers. He lobotomized children as young as 12 years old. Howard Dully was just 12 years old when his stepmother decided he was too defiant. Dr. Freeman diagnosed him with childhood schizophrenia and drove the ice pick into his brain. Howard spent decades searching for his soul. Even royalty was not spared. Rosemary Kennedy, the sister of a future president, was subjected to Freeman's blade simply to cure her mood swings. The procedure left her with the mental capacity of a 2-year-old child. She was hidden away in a dark institution for the rest of her natural life. She is the ultimate symbol of how medical authority can be weaponized to silence those who are simply inconvenient to the system. How did the medical community allow this? Why did no other surgeon stop him? Because the lobotomy wasn't a fringe experiment, it was a massive media phenomenon. Newspapers celebrated it as a miracle cure, drowning out the few warning signs with a flood of sensational headlines. In fact, the inventor of the original procedure, Egas Moniz, was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine. The absolute highest scientific honor on Earth was given for the systematic destruction of the human frontal lobe. Over 50,000 lobotomies were performed in the United States alone. Doctors stood by and clapped as Freeman severed the neural pathways of humanity, operating at a terrifying rate of 25 patients a single day. What finally stopped him wasn't medical ethics, it wasn't surgical oversight, it was chemistry. In the 1950s, the first antipsychotic drug, thorazine, was invented. A chemical lobotomy proved to be much cleaner than a physical one. Freeman's dark empire finally collapsed. He lost his medical license after a patient died on his table. He spent his final years driving an old van, visiting the empty, hollow patients he had created, seeking validation. He died truly believing he was a medical pioneer. But the ultimato-pathological reality remains on the scans of his thousands of victims. Massive, chilling black voids in the brain architecture, where the complex beauty of human emotion once perfectly resided. A silence that history cannot ignore. Surgery is fundamentally meant to preserve life. It is meticulously meant to remove the disease, not the identity of the patient. The lobotomy stands forever as the absolute and ultimate betrayal of the surgeon's oath. It was a crime against the anatomy of the self. It reminds us that medical consensus is not always clinical truth. Just because a procedure is approved, celebrated, and widely practiced does not automatically mean it is rooted in sound, undeniable biological reality. We must never forget that the line between a groundbreaking medical treatment and anatomical mutilation is often severely blurred by societal convenience and the completely unchecked ego of the physician. The victims of Dr. Freeman are long gone, but their silenced minds echo loudly in the archives of medical malpractice. We close this chapter of the Blackbook, but the autopsy of history never truly ends. Always question the cure. Always thoroughly analyze the raw pathology behind the given prescription, because the single most dangerous instrument inside any operating room is an unquestioned, unchecked ideology. Thank you for joining the Clinical Dissection. Subscribe to help us open the next historical case file. And remember, trust no diagnosis.